Evil West is a third-person action game developed by Flying Wild Hog and published by Focus Entertainment. Evil West, not to be confused with Weird West, Hard West,
West of
Kanye
Death,
West of Low,
Wild
Forbidden
West,
West,
2,
Journey
Blood
to
West.
the West. Evil West is set in an alternate universe of the 1800s United States. You play as Jesse Rentier, a vampire hunter for the Institute tracking down the most evil, dangerous threat ever seen. A child. Evil West features fast-paced combat with tons of weapons and options on how to defeat the army of monsters standing between you and felicity. Let's start with presentation. This title does okay in this regard. The art direction and the vibrant environments do most of the heavy lifting. I've seen better looking games, but I've also seen games that have very similar looking environments. Looking at you, Halo Infinite. The visual variety is great, as levels have varying vibes to them, with certain sections being quite impressive. There are a few neat details to combat, like how enemies get more torn apart when you deal damage to them. You can see exposed bones and flesh ripped apart before dealing the final blow, similar to the Dead Space remake, but nowhere near the same graphical polish. The character models look dated and there are some low quality textures and animations, but overall, decent visuals for a AA title. The performance, on the other hand, is really awful for the Xbox One. I don't think it can hit 30 FPS consistently, so last gen users beware. The Series X, on the other hand, didn't have nearly as many frame rate drops. There are the occasional bugs you'll encounter, sometimes quite a lot, but I haven't encountered any game breaking ones. It uses a similar camera to titles like God of War, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, and others. This up-close third-person camera works for survival horror games, but is hit or miss with action titles. This one is more hit, but it has some moments where it's hard to fully tell what is happening. The vibrant oranges and reds in certain levels sometimes clash with the enemy indicators and make it hard to see when they are about to attack. When things get very chaotic, all indicators and enemies start to become obscure. I think the arrows that indicate enemies outside of your field of view could be made more impactful. I often don't notice them in the heat of battle. Evil West is not on the same level as other titles from a visual standpoint, that's just a fact. Its appeal lies in its outstanding gameplay. So let's get into more details about it. Evil West is primarily a brawler with some third-person shooter elements mixed in. Movement is kind of stiff and reminds me of the newer God of Wars. Similar camera, can't jump, comparable dodges and healing. You primarily attack using the Gauntlet, which is a melee attack with only one basic combo and a few additional moves, like Superman punches, or the Uppercut, which can be used to juggle enemies, or the much more fun options, the Cannonball or the Touchdown. Both are a blast to use. You will unlock a giant arsenal of weaponry throughout your journey, and they do a good job of gradually introducing new items. Items can be additional defensive options, guns, explosives, or abilities. There is overlap within your arsenal, but I think the intention is to give you a ton of options on how to deal with any encounter. So instead of depth, it's breadth. Take the flamethrower. It can be used for crowd control, but the shockwave is great at that as well. So you have a decision which one might be the best at this moment. And since the flamethrower is great for enemies like the exploders, which make me feel like I'm playing Serious Sam again, flamethrower, rifles, miniguns, all great against them, but which resource do you want to tap into right now? Because that same one might be useful soon. There are 3 resources you'll have to keep track of: health, ammo, and energy. Ammo and other resources like fuel always recharge but at different rates. There are some powerful moves that use energy, such as the aforementioned shockwave along with the supercharge. There is an upgrade you can unlock which allows you to use energy in order to regain health when your standard healing is cooling down. This loose approach to combat adds to replayability and means you shouldn't ever feel stuck. You can try out various abilities, focus on different enemies, and use everything at your disposal in order to succeed. I think the game starts off very weak because of this. The fun comes from variety, but at the start you are limited. You can't even block during the first mission. The gameplay gets better the more options you have. At a certain point you can argue there might be too many options, but I enjoy them. Honestly, I think the only weapon that is useless is the crossbow. Its main purpose is shooting ropes across large areas in the level. The rifle and crossbow's main purpose in combat is to hit an enemy's exposed weak point, and both can do it. So why are there two? Defensively, you have three options: blocking, dodging, and kicking. There are times when one is clearly the best option. Kicks are great against heavy attacks. Blocking is great against most other attacks. Dodging is useful for certain attacks from bosses that can't be blocked or interrupted. Dodging is also useful in order to get distance from enemies. A successful block, or a series of them for larger foes, will leave them in a stunned state, allowing you to deal a lot of damage quickly. You can easily cancel out of an attack into a defensive move, which is nice, but you can't cancel out of a defensive move into another one, so there is a small penalty for choosing wrong. Let's get to enemies. There's a solid variety here, but most fall within a kind of large or small category. Small enemies are the ones that are easily cannonballed or stunned. These guys are typically swarmers. They try to get in close and attack, typically in large groups. Large foes deal more damage but are slower, and there will typically only be a couple of them during an encounter. There is a lot of variance within these simple categorizations. There's what the fuck is my English? Werewolves, cowboys, and a lot of different ticks. I think the game likes to call them ticks. Each one with a signature move or two to be aware of. A couple of quick examples. Werewolves do a move that will empower nearby werewolves if not interrupted, and the infected Proteus sends out these miniature bombs. What I really like here is that every enemy, including bosses, all follow the same rules. Each standard attack from an enemy will have their limbs glow. All heavy attacks have their entire body glow, and all weak points have the same circle pop up. These consistent tells make it easier to understand what a new enemy is doing. You would think this would make the game too easy, but there is still learning that can be done. Some enemies have specific combos or tells for a weak point, such as the Stalker, which does a little side shuffle before sending out a web, or the Vampire Highborn, which does a quick jump back before leaving a small window for you to capitalize on. Another way the game ramps up the challenge is by having a ton of enemies be present in an encounter. There are a lot of enemy types, so the devs mix up the ones present to create unique challenges. A ton of small enemies are no threat and can easily be fucked with, but having to contest with them and a couple of larger foes is a bitch. I think the main thing I have to say about the combat is that it's fun. I had a blast punching enemies, the moves feel good to use, and some provide a nice spectacle. Executions are pretty quick and don't slow down the pace too much. There was enough variety in enemies and player options that kept the game enjoyable all the way through. To criticize it a little bit, I think there should be a reward for mixing up your gameplay approach in order to reward creativity and using your full arsenal. Also, I wish there was more melee combos and E combos. Seeing the same E combo multiple times gets old fast. Onto some other systems. There is an upgrade tree in this game. There are two types of upgrades. Perks, these give you new abilities or strengthen the ones you already have. These can be things like the Slam or Shockwave. They can also be simple health or energy increases as well. Special perks can be found in chests during levels. These unlock unique perks for you to purchase. The second type of upgrade is character upgrades. These improve the actual weapons, like making them deal more damage, have faster cooldowns, deal lightning damage, etc. These two have different currencies. Character upgrades require money, and perks need perk points. Nothing super special about Evil West's upgrade system. It provides a few things to think about outside of combat, and the additional perks along with finding money provide a good incentive to explore levels. There are some upgrades I really like, and the lightning upgrades for guns are appropriately powerful. A complaint I do have is on nearly every level, there is a machine that will allow you to reset your upgrades and perks. I think to give players the option to try out different setups but there's a much more elegant solution, which would be to just give players the option to turn them on and off, and receive back the currency. I'm sure the devs know this, but for some reason they couldn't get it to work right. Seeing those reset stations constantly when you don't need them is kind of like those porn ads. You know, the ones that ask you if you want a bigger dick when you are clearly happy with the one that you have. Do you want a bigger dick? No, I'm happy with my dick. I have a good dick, ladies. What the fuck am I talking about? Level design. The level design here is your basic linear level design with collectibles defined. There is a lot of lore, chests, and money to discover. Sometimes money is found on bodies that set up a hammock wrong. That's not how you do it, you idiot. Other times there are just bags of dough on the floor. Level design is nothing spectacular. The levels are split between very linear and linear, with some tram car set pieces sprinkled in. A couple levels do open up slightly and have tasks you can complete in any order, or just allow you to find your own way forward. Quick tip. If an interactive area has a post on both sides, you can safely go back and forth. If it doesn't, that means it's a point of no return. Hopefully that will save you some annoyance. The levels do try to vary the gameplay with simple puzzles, but the combat really is all there is to Evil West. The puzzles are no-brainers and take longer to complete than they do to figure out. A lot of action games enjoy adding in random bullshit to vary gameplay, but as long as the combat is great, I can deal with straightforward levels. Let's talk about the story. There is one. The characters aren't particularly entertaining or charismatic. I often forget some of their names. So let's talk about bosses instead. If you want to avoid spoilers for the bosses, please skip ahead. The bosses still use the same indicators as the other enemies, but have additional aspects to them that make them harder than your standard adversary. The basic concept for them is layering. They try to layer on multiple attacks or different threats in order to be challenging. The parasitter has 2 tentacles you'll need to take out that have unpredictable attack patterns. Some attacks need to be dodged or have weak points, but when both are active, your window for offense shrinks. The brooch likes sending these branches towards you, along with some smaller swarm enemies to mask its own attacks. William Rentier has a blind attack which makes his next strike hard to see. He also has clones with small weak point windows. Felicity has a few attacks you'll need to take cover from, and certain combo strings provide clear openings for your own offense. I think the bosses all provide a good challenge, while not being unfair. They use the same indications as everyone else, but have more layered on top to make it harder to exploit. I wish there were more than 4 though. Evil West is a very fun, flawed title with great gameplay, but not much else going for it. I still recommend this title for its gameplay alone. I think it's worth the $60, but I understand not everyone will agree, but I definitely do recommend it if you see it on sale. There is no bland open world, no boring side quest, no fucking battle pass. What there is a well-paced 10 to 12 hour campaign with a lot of fun combat throughout. All killer, no filler. Just a ton of variety in weapons and enemies to use them on. These are the kinds of games I love, and if you are like me, I think you'll love Evil West too. I would much rather play a 10-hour long game and enjoy every minute than play a 100-hour long game and hate 70% of it. There are flaws here. There's a decent amount of bugs if you play on Xbox One. Avoid this fucking title because it runs like shit. If you like stories, there's not much here. The villain is a literal child and not as funny as Resident Evil 4's. But when the combat clicks, it feels so fun. Evil West isn't going to be for everyone, but for those who it is for, will love it. That's all from me. Thank you so much for watching this video, and remember, dragons don't piss gold. Goodbye.